Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your daily dose of zombies news from the game and its community here on COD Zombies HQ. Thank you so much for tuning in today. There is a lot to talk about, so without further ado, let's kick things right off with our first story of the day. You gotta hand it to Treyarch that the update support for the zombies mode this year has been really good. They released a patch for zombies yesterday, and they released a new patch for zombies today as well, where today's new patch is mostly focused on fixing a bunch of exploits around the map here on Firebase Z. The first of which is something that we've heard before from them, that they've closed an exploit where a player could teleport outside of the village area of the map using Ether Shroud Tier 3. Now, while we can assume that the patch for this exploit was just getting way outside of the map, Treyarch is of course intending to patch the ability to get outside of the spawn via a strafe jump, but a new method has been found to get around that inevitable patch, which we'll cover later in the video. Next up, Treyarch says they've closed an exploit where a player could become invulnerable to damage after using a Molotov and a chopper gunner. This exploit was basically a straight up God mode exploit. When they say that you become invulnerable to damage, it means it. It basically gives you God mode in zombies, but Treyarch has now said that they've patched it. And lastly, an issue that I've experienced personally and has become really frustrating, Treyarch says that they've addressed a rare issue that could cause players to lose their weapons when re-rolling attachments at the arsenal. Ever since a month and a half ago, where Treyarch tried to patch the weapon duplication glitch by re-rolling attachments at the arsenal by taking your gun away for a few seconds then giving it back to you, there's been a whole bunch of issues introduced as a result of it. From players losing their weapons, from players getting mobbed by zombies while they have no weapon because the game took it away from them for a few seconds while it's re-rolling their attachments, and also something that I've experienced in a bunch of games, and I'm sure you have as well, is that the reroll attachments feature just straight up is busted for a few weapons. It doesn't work. If you get a weapon from the mystery box with a bad scope on certain weapons and try to reroll attachments, you're never gonna get a different scope. Next up, Treyarch says in regards to the new perk Tombstone Soda that they addressed an issue where shadow form visual effects could stay active when viewed as a spectating player. Now, yesterday we covered some footage of a player that was permanently stuck inside of shadow form, but this seems more likely to be Treyarch fixing the first person shadow form effects when you check out a player's screen when viewing them as a spectator. So it's awesome that Treyarch is trying to stay on top of all of the new glitches and exploits that are being discovered here on Firebase Z, but while we praise them on the good, we gotta call them out on the bad and the things that still need to be fixed, the biggest of which was found out at the launch of Firebase Z, but hasn't really been addressed yet. I thought it would, so let's bring it up in case you guys didn't know about it. Before the release of Firebase Z, Treyarch made sweeping balance changes to the way weapons work in zombies, specifically the way the assault rifles and the SMG classes work. For all of the weapons, for both of those classes, assault rifles, SMGs, Treyarch increased the ammo capacity, the reserve ammo capacity, and increase critical damage for both assault rifles and SMGs to buff them, bring them a little bit more on par with the LMGs and shotguns in this game, which was a change that everyone agreed was needed and applauded Treyarch for that, rightfully. But it seems like Treyarch didn't account for something very important in these balance changes, where an Awesome Zombies Twitch streamer Smart Guy, who's been doing tireless work trying to crunch numbers of the way progression works in zombies, from damage numbers to the way progression XP works, well, he found out that at the launch of Firebase Z, quote, I can now 100% confirm that when you pack-a-punch an assault rifle or SMG at the moment, it reverts to the old crit damage values pre-Firebase Z. The ammo buff works accurately on pack-a-punch weapons, but the increased crit damage does not. So if you've been playing with pack-a-punch assault rifles or SMGs, and ever since this patch noticed, well, things don't really feel that much different. The crit damage values when I'm going for headshots feels pretty much the same. Well, that's just because it is. And hopefully Treyarch can address these issues in a big patch in the future. Next up, like I said earlier in the video, with the strafe jump to skip buying the first door in the spawn likely to get patched in the future, players are continuing to try to find new ways of skipping that first door by for speedrun's sake. Well, Reddit user Thief Knight has done just that. This one is quite a bit more complicated than a simple strafe jump, however, and you're going to need a fairly high controller sensitivity sensitivity or a decent mouse sensitivity in order to pull this off. So while it's kind of difficult to pull off and might not be that useful right now, once the strafe jump does get patched, this might be the only way to get to that starting teleporter quickly without wasting points on that first door. So hey, if you're interested in just board and spawn, might be something fun to practice. Next up, in a clip from Reddit user Perry's Reddit over on the COD Zombies Reddit, that accurately shows why it's a bad idea to try to crowd surf here in Cold War Zombies. To be honest, I'm half surprised that all the zombies didn't just stop and just suddenly start using their ranged attacks on him. But yeah, for future reference, crowd surfing on zombies in this game is definitely a no-no. Next up, Reddit user BoomingXLR8 has an example of what's gotta be the most perfect timing for the ending cutscene that I've seen in zombies yet. If you watched the last couple episodes of the Zombies News Update, I would definitely recommend you do that. If you aren't caught up already, then you would know that the ending cutscene for Firebase Z is rendered in real time, in-game, while it's playing on your screen. This was resulted in a bunch of oddities in the past, and in this case, it's an example of 100% perfect timing that utilizes the voice lines from an essence trap to count down to the explosion at the end of the cutscene. I don't know how he managed to line it up in game, but it's just crazy. Take a listen.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do Svidania.
Next up, in kind of an addendum to the story we covered yesterday where a player was able to defeat the final boss of the main Easter egg here on Firebase Z in under 7 seconds of actual gameplay. Now this did spark a lot of discussion about the perceived difficulty of Easter eggs here in Cold War Zombies. Whereas in prior Treyarch Zombies games, the Easter egg was a long, extended, pretty tedious line of tasks in order to reach a difficult final boss fight. Obviously, Treyarch is going an extremely different route with their main Easter eggs here in Cold War, with a lot of players noticing the obvious that the main Easter eggs in this game are significantly simpler, more straightforward, and more quote-unquote hand-holdy than they ever were in the past, and at the same time don't present the same kind of difficulty or challenge like they did in Easter eggs in Black Ops 4 or Black Ops 3, for example. But ultimately, I think the way the community should look at this is in two ways. First is the difficulty of finding out the steps for the actual Easter egg itself. I know a lot of people, myself included, are kind of nostalgic for the times where it would take days to find out the steps for a main Easter egg in any zombies map by Treyarch. But the negative of that is that there was a reason why it took so long to find out steps for Easter eggs in past zombies maps. Because they were tedious and just kind of random. That they didn't really make sense from step to step, that they were long, extended, convoluted of messes in order to get to some final result. Treyarch has obviously started to streamline that here in Cold War, making the actual steps to the Easter egg a lot more accessible to a larger player base. I think more players are just getting into zombies than they ever have before, maybe even since Black Ops 3. So having a less tedious, convoluted steps to actually complete the Easter egg is a good thing in the long run, and you can understand from the perspectives of the developers why they would want more players to experience the content they put a lot of work into. But the flip side of that is the balance that Treyarch seems to have not gotten exactly right yet, and that is the difficulty of completing the actual Easter egg itself. That while the main Easter eggs so far on the 2 maps in Cold War aren't convoluted and aren't difficult, Treyarch should continue to try to find the right balance to make the Easter eggs not convoluted while making them a little bit more challenging than we've seen in the first 2 maps of this game. Treyarch has kind of re-examined and reinvented their own Easter egg formula with Cold War Zombies. Now it'll be interesting to see whether or not they manage to perfect it. But guys, that wraps up the news today. I want to thank you so much for watching. Hey, if you did enjoy it, why not leave a thumbs up on the video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. There's a whole lot more to find here on Firebase Z, and I can't wait to share those with you when those discoveries are finally made. But guys, I want to thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you with another Zombies news video tomorrow. Peace.